One of the questions we hear a lot is what triggers a DEA inspection? The reality is it's not just random typically. Usually some sort of red flag has popped up that wants to make them come and do a visit. So today we're going to go through the top 3 reasons the DEA might come in and do an inspection. So the first part of a DEA inspection is making contact. The surprise kick down the door with people in windbreakers coming and checking your drugs isn't usually how it works. Typically, it's they contact your coordinator and they schedule a visit. They want to come by, just see how you're doing business. This is an inspection. They want to see how things are operating. So it's usually not some big surprise, but they want to coordinate, have both parties ready to go. So the triggers for a DEA inspection don't necessarily always have to be a loss of a drug or diversion. It could be you just want to check, see how you're operating. Maybe you took over the EMS division and you want to make contact with the DEA to have a good working relationship, as we all want. And so you might request them to come in. I've seen that with local agencies here in California where they just want to have their entire system looked at to make sure they're doing business properly. The biggest trigger when the DEA comes in and do an inspection is when there's a significant diversion. And this isn't, one missing narcotic, because typically that's coordinated through your EMS agency, medical director, just figure out, okay, what happened to that? Let's contact law enforcement and do a report. But if you have a large amount of a controlled substance, it goes missing, turns up where it shouldn't be, that could trigger a DEA inspection. They're gonna wanna come in, not just look and find out what happened to that drug or those drugs and why they went missing, but they're gonna see, okay, how are you doing business? How are you managing your inventory? What led to this? Because if there's this big problem, that might just be the tip of the iceberg and they're going to want to investigate and find that out. Other triggers for DEA inspection might not be internal. They could be from the external sources, such as a neighboring agency, someone out in the public is reporting it, maybe a family member or someone who's having drug issues reporting that they found some fentanyl at their house or something. And so there could be other triggers from outside sources that get reported to the DEA or local EMS agency that cause an inspection for you to have to show how you're doing business and show them your inventory, basically. Another trigger for the DEA and come and do an inspection may not be an acute issue that occurred. It may be a chronic pattern of behavior. Maybe there's been a notice somehow of poor record keeping, complacency, and how reports, DEA 41 forms are being submitted. And so they may just say, hey, these guys are clearly not taking these deadly drugs serious, so we probably should go take a look. So when the DEA does show up for that inspection, first thing they're looking for is, do you have your records? Are they readily available? Once they get there, then they're going to see, okay, how well organized are they? Is there one point of contact they're dealing with, or they're dealing with a bunch of people over this one issue? And so they're going to look at overall, just how is this agency managing their controlled substances? So the big question is, how do I avoid a DEA inspection? The reality is, it's not a bad thing. If your ducks are in order, you're keeping track of everything as you should be, an inspection is just going to end with them saying, good job, keep it up. So have all your paperwork ready to go, whether it's digital or physical paper itself, everything in one location so that if they come in, you're ready to go. You have one person for them to talk to, and make sure there's no gaps in your records. You want to make sure every drug is accounted for, cradle to grave, for the last 2 years. Some states actually is 3 years. So make sure whatever state you're in, you have complete documentation ready to go in case you have that inspection. If someone running an EMS agency wants to protect their staff from a negative DEA inspection, the best thing they can do is embrace a culture of accountability. You need to stress how important it is that you track these narcotics in a proper method, because ultimately your staff's only going to take something as serious as you do. A great example of building a culture of accountability is a local fire department to us here in California that a new captain took over EMS, specifically controlled substances. He reached out to the local DEA office, asked them if they could come and do an inspection. I luckily happened to be there as they were onboarding the LogRx program. And so I got to walk through their entire inspection with the DEA agent, and she went through every step. She had a nice thick binder that she went through with them, answered all their questions. There actually were things that they could have been doing better. She was very polite about it. They came up with a plan to adjust how they were operating. She left knowing that they were concerned about running their department well. And she then knew that she could count on them if they ever had an issue, that they were going to take care of it. From my experience dealing with DEA offices, it's not this big scary entity that you have to be concerned about. They've been very helpful and I've actually dealt with them firsthand. And so if you want them to come take a look at how you're running things, it's not going to be them showing up with a hammer ready to knock you down. They might actually have some good advice and guidance on how you can be a better operation. DEA inspections aren't typically random. usually there's a red flag. So the agencies that can get through them the best are the ones that aren't even worried about the DEA inspection. They're just worried about running a good organization with high level of accountability.